Okay, this video is going to be called My Best Books. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's too many of them. I'm just going to go through the ones that are the best and just really briefly where it all comes from. You know, I studied a lot of history, cultural stuff, like the history of the ancient Greeks, Aristotle, probably the smartest guy who ever lived, him and Isaac Newton. And he basically summarized the useful knowledge of his time. We live in a kind of a crazy time where the world's like being turned upside down and Western civilization is collapsing. And I noticed that nobody was stepping up to the plate and doing what needs to be done, which is to summarize the great things of Western culture. So I decided I should be the one to do it. And I'm the perfect person to do it. I've got the knowledge, I've got the skill, I've got the interest. Okay, and when you read it, when you read about the ancient Greeks, the most important person is Aristotle. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ancient Greeks that are magnificent. With Rome, it's really much simpler. Cicero's the only guy that you have to study. There's a lot of people worth studying in ancient Rome, but Cicero is the center of everything, okay? And Cicero was great with rhetoric and many other things, and Cicero was quite an inspiration to me. Okay, then what really inspired me a lot as well was the Irish, okay? My father's from Ireland, and you talk about Ireland, they're either drinkers or thinkers, okay? And the Irish people love books. They're really poor. You don't see any art or technology coming to Ireland. They're just too darn poor. The only art is the illustrations they drew in the margins of the Bibles that they translated. They transcribed, like Sergio Aragonés, Mad Magazine. Okay, but they made lots of monasteries, and the Irish monks, they preserved civilization. Here's the book about it, How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Cahill. After Ireland's heroic role from the fall of Rome to the rise of medieval Europe, like in the Renaissance days, the Irish made tons of monasteries. They kept copies of all these books. So the raiding Viking barbarians would come and, even burn down the monasteries. But there were enough monasteries with enough copies of the book that they preserved a tremendous amount of the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans and, of course, copies of the Bible. Okay, so they're an inspiration to me too, because now everything's on the internet and can be deleted. And the other big hero to me was Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas said, just like we are created in the image of God, therefore we too can be creators. We are, like Johannes Kepler said, we're following God's thoughts after him, that it is pleasing to God when we do these things, and that science and religion go together, and they totally do. So he's a unifier of faith and religion, and I see myself as the same thing, because I have a lot of experience with science ever since I was a little guy, 18 years old, and I can tell you, you can't have science without Christian ethics. People always say, oh, you don't need Christian ethics to do a scientific experience, and I would say, yes, you do, because you're paid to lie on all of these big scientific experiments, so you have to have Christian ethics that say, I will follow the Ten Commandments and do what is right, and that way my data will be beneficial, because otherwise most research nowadays is paid for by corporations, and the corporations always want you to just say their product is good. They don't care about the real science. So if you want to do something that's useful for mankind, and you have to care about mankind if you have Christian ethics, you have to have it. Because I can tell you, most of what's in the medical journals, it's all bogus. The nutrition journals, it's all bogus. It's all just paid for corporations, and it's nonsense. So you have to have Christian ethics, or you can't have real science. That's just a fact. Study it for yourself for a while. You'll come to that conclusion, if you're honest about it. Okay, and I also really admired this guy right here, Schopenhauer. He's a little bit crazy. All geniuses are crazy. But he made the point that he says, if you feel you have something to write, you should just write it. And you should accept the fact that you're not going to get any money. The better your book is, the more of a real genius you are, the more you will be hated and ostracized and rejected. But if you want to do something great, that's what you have to do. It's almost like you're leaving a landmark on a desert island that someday a new explorer will find. And that's what I figure. I'm just kind of doing like the Irish monks, keeping this information alive. If it wasn't for Dr. John McDougall, Walter Kempner's work, Royce Swank, Nathan Pritikin, Dennis Burke, it had all been swept away under the carpet. None of these doctors are in any of the textbooks, okay? And, I'm doing the same thing, keeping alive his legacy, the people he taught us about, and the other ones I've discovered from reading their books, Hal Huggins, there's a whole bunch of them, Gregory Sloop, William C. Roberts, etc., okay? And that's a magnificent book. That's the best book you'll ever read in your life about how to write well, The Art of Literature by Arthur Schopenhauer. And I studied the other great writers who I admire, Victor Hugo was in exile for 19 years, okay? That's a long time, and he wrote Les Miserables, okay? Fyodor Dostoevsky was in exile in Siberia, okay? Okay, so here's me when I was a medical student, and just the point was I've been writing books for a long time. In medical school, I wrote 2 books, The Medical Student's Guide to Top Board Scores, Spanish for Healthcare Professionals, and the dean of my medical school wrote that book. It was a really good book at the time. And this one, the Spanish book, I wrote with my mom. My mom's from Puerto Rico, and I had a lot of fun with that. But now getting into my best books. Okay, well, first of all, one last historical thing. I wrote these surgery books when I was an imaging-guided surgeon, a young guy with Elsevier Amorphis, the best publishing company related to radiology and imaging-guided surgery. Here's the bathroom at my old house. I call this the magic bathroom because despite working full-time, this was my secret of reading so much. I always read in the bathroom. Usually I'd have a big textbook on here, a little movable table. This is when I was taking my boards. I just taped a bunch of stuff to the wall. Of course, this is in the basement bathroom. My wife said I was a barbarian, destroying the property value of the house. All right, so anyways, this is just some innovative techniques, condensed notes, outline notes, mnemonics, illustrated condensed notes for studying. So I got 99s on med school residency boards. That's how I did it. Reading in the bathroom, having this note format, and a whole bunch of other study skill stuff. So I wrote a book about how I did all that stuff. The best one is a student's one. So if you're interested in a studies book for somebody going to grad school or med school, this is the best book. Straight A's at Stanford and on to Harvard, teenager version. The big book you don't want, it's too much. That's too much for most people. But the student version is pretty concise. Okay, if you're a parent trying to raise a younger kid to become a genius, here's the book to read, How to Raise IQ and Become a Genius. Because I looked at these people like the Polgar sisters who became grandmasters at chess because their father taught them to. And you can really dramatically improve academic performance and intellectual performance if the parent guides the child. Like look at Mozart. The reason he became so great, yeah, he had intrinsic talent, but it's because his father was a good musician and devoted himself to teaching him from a young age, and the child wanted to learn. He was motivated. Okay, for younger people that want to learn study skills, this is the best book, Underground Guide to Study Skills, How to Get a Real Education. And it basically could be read by a junior high student and older. And I kind of took out all the autobiographical stuff just to get to the point real fast. It's a real simple, easy book to read, but even a grad school student will benefit from it. In my experience, most medical students, they don't know even really pretty basic study skills. They just got by because they're pretty smart. I've had doctors who are real smart who flunked their boards 5 times. They study with me 2-3 times, then they pass their boards. Because there's a way to do stuff. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Watch a memory contest. How could they memorize all this stuff? Because they have a method. Once you learn the methods, it's easy to memorize stuff. But why not give yourself the IQ boost? Okay, well, this is just an old funny picture. And these are a bunch of my early introductory books. All my books now are way better than these. I did the best I could at the time, but I didn't know how to make drawings, and my medical nutritional knowledge wasn't as good back in the old days. All right, and then first of all, I wanted to preserve Western civilization and culture, so I summarized the quotes in this book. It's about an 800-page quote book. I've actually got like about thousands of pages on my notes that I read when I do these nightly videos. Rhyme, rhetoric, and logic. My friends had mocked me that my writing wasn't as good as they thought it should be in my first couple of books. So then I read everything you could on the subject, like hundreds of books, and all these articles and stuff, and I summarized it in rhyme, rhetoric, and logic. So it's basically like a graduate degree in how to write effectively. And it all comes down to what I think the best summary statement is. Write as if you were talking to an intelligent friend. You want to make them laugh, you want to entertain them, that's what you do. And then there's a whole bunch of little tricks on how to format things and all that. If you'll notice, if you pay any attention to my books, they're aesthetically beautiful. Like, that's on purpose. Here is the creation of Adam from the Sistine Chapel ceiling by Michelangelo. And so this is Best Christian Art. This is the book people love. Out of all my books, this one and the other one, The Best of the West, are the favorite ones. People just love this book. And everybody loves it. Anybody, has a brain in their head, because it's all the most beautiful paintings ever made. Because most people don't really care about nutrition. Most people who watch my YouTube videos, they're interested in nutrition, and my non-nutritional YouTube videos tend to be shadow banned rather severely. But in real life, this art book is what everybody wants. Everybody wants a copy of this because it's magnificent. It's the best art book ever made. And why is it that I can make a better art book than a professor at a university who teaches art history? Because I just show you beautiful paintings. They're going to be full of crap. They're going to try to tell you that modern art's the same thing as real art. It's like, shut up, get out of here. Or they're going to show you, a caveman painting or a statue with all its limbs broken off and say that's as good as something else. It's BS. They BS you, and that's why you can't trust them anymore. And then they write so much. I mostly just show pictures. I don't write that much in those books. Okay, here's Best Christian Songs, and I wanted to summarize all the Christian music because I'm afraid it's going to be deleted from the internet. I can tell you what is coming. What is coming if things continue in the same direction of emphasizing atheism and secular humanism. They're going to make Christianity illegal. The Bible is going to become illegal. Christian music is going to be removed from the internet. It's just a fact. So This way, civilization can be reconstructed if it ever is able to reemerge from the desolation that's coming. Hopefully, there's enough Christians with a brain that they're going to speak up, and society and civilization will be preserved. So here's this book here, The Best of the West in Art, Movies, and Music, and it's a magnificent book. It's a big, beautiful book. Big pages, 8.5 by 11, and the paintings are just spectacular. But again, this is the kind of book that on the internet, totally shadow banned in the bookstore, shadow banned on my YouTube channel, but in real life, it's magnificent. It's sublime, okay? It's aesthetically so pleasing, and when you look at it and you read it, there's nothing like it. There really isn't. You can look at these books, there's great historians, Thomas Woods, Rodney Stark, and there's other ones, and their books are very well written, very well researched, but they got no pictures. Or they'll have just, maybe 3 pictures. Okay, this has got about 1,000 pictures in it, and they're spectacular. So anyways, there it is. In real life, everybody wants this book. This is the book, I Figured Out the Spine. I'm the best doctor in the world for figuring out the spine, and I give lectures on it. You can watch the lectures, but this is the book where it came from. So I'm reading all these spine films, and, as typical, I'm like, I understand it better than any of the textbook authors. I'll write my own book. So that's what I did. This is a book about poor man's way to fight cancer. Yeah, because all the books about cancer that I could find, they all kind of stink. And then, I just talked, they're almost all just the same old lightweight crap, follow the protocol, okay? Poor Man's Way to Fight Cancer. I got a picture of the Schultz brothers, Stanford University wrestling coaches. This is Dave Schultz, Mark Schultz, world and Olympic champions. They were my coaches when I was a college wrestler. They were very good to me. I learned a lot from them. I learned more from them about life in general besides wrestling than I did from many of my professors, okay? So anyways, my doctor buddies tell me they really like this book because it's simple and I get to the point. It was sort of my basic philosophy of health and nutrition. And my later books get a lot more complicated. This was only like about 160 pages, which is pretty small compared to my big books that tend to be around 600 pages or something. Okay, here's sort of like my big monster book. This one is called The Medical Reformation. And basically, I rewrote the internal medicine textbooks because all the internal medicine textbooks are totally stupid on all the chronic diseases. This is essentially all the chronic diseases. They all say the same thing. Oh, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, atherosclerosis, whatever, peripheral vascular disease, cerebral vascular disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases associated with aging, they suck, okay? They're ridiculous. We don't know what causes it. Just take our pill, try to slow it down. So I go through what really causes disease and what can really be done to help people. This is a masterpiece book, a Medical Reformation, Vegan Renaissance Bible. Martin Luther, I think he's an asshole. He destroyed Christendom, but the picture is rather spectacular, and it was a dramatic moment. Here I stand, I could do no other, so help me God, before Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, that died of worms. Okay, it's an extraordinary time in painting. And I like to put, a beautiful painting on the cover. What I'm doing is showing the aesthetic beauty of this. They're spectacular, okay? This is the book I wrote about Dr. John McDougall. He's the greatest doctor who ever lived. I want to be the greatest doctor, so I have to learn from him. So I studied all of his work. I read almost all of his books, and I went through almost all of his videos that I could, and I read almost all of his newsletters, everything I could. This reminds me of Dr. McDougall and his wife Mary and all the stuff that he had to do. So I studied him pretty extensively so I could learn from him. And then I summarize it in this book for people who want to learn what he did pretty quick. And it's heavily indexed to all of his videos and all of his newsletters. Okay. Basically, Dr. McDougall figured out that the plant 100% vegan, low-fat starch diet cures most of the Western diseases. And if you can't cure them, you can at least dramatically improve the patient's condition more effectively than just about anything else. He showed that. He proved that. He's got tons of testimonials to show it, as well as his papers and everything else. And, he built on the work of Kempner and Pritikin and Burkitt and Swank and Heimlich, etc. Okay? And there it is. There's the truth. There's the truth. The low-fat vegan diet is the best you could do. I say that not being a fan of vegans. I don't like animal rights people. I think most of them are a bunch of watermelons. I'm not a fan. I would have laughed. I was a young wrestler, tough guy. I would have laughed if you'd have told me there was something good about the vegan diet. Like that, in my mind's eye, it meant, granola eating, sandal wearing, long-haired, Grateful Dead, tie-dye, weed smoking scumbag, okay? That's what I would have thought when I was a young guy, but now that I know, I only care about it for health. And for health, that's what keeps your arteries open. And you need your arteries open because everything works better with good blood flow. Then I wrote this book, Top 50 Books in Health and Nutrition Maximum Health. What that was about was I wanted to show if a new person comes along, like some person's going to come along and they're going to want to understand. They're going to also ask themselves, how the heck did I figure out all this stuff? Because my knowledge is it's like superior to anybody else I know. There's a few other people that are in the ballpark, but most of them, they're playing games. I'm not playing any games. My channel's not monetized, okay? I'm not selling any supplements or any BS. Okay, top 50 books in health and nutrition. I wanted them to show the reading pathway that I use to figure all this stuff out. Okay, these are the best 50. There's really about 60 books that are recommended in there because some of them are honorable mentions. And though it shows you how to do it. You can recreate this knowledge. Don't get me wrong, I added a ton of other stuff to it, but these are the foundational books. So this will be preserved. The knowledge will not be lost. Okay, then here's the book, Food, Mood, and IQ. I basically was rewriting neurology, psychiatry, psychology books, okay? Because, you know, the more you look at it, psychology is an absolute joke, okay? How is somebody who can't tell the difference between a man and a woman going to give you advice about relationship? It's a joke. Ask a psychologist, what's a good book? What's a good painting? How should a man live his life? They can't answer any of those questions. A Christian can answer those questions in 5 seconds. Try to be like Jesus Christ and Mary and try to be like the saints. That's the best, most honorable life you could live. You want a good piece of art? Look at Michelangelo, look at Caravaggio, look at Raphael, look at Edmund Leighton, look at Philippe Champagne and a whole bunch of other great artists. Okay, they can tell you what beautiful art is. You want beautiful architecture? Look at a cathedral. They can answer all those questions. Okay, psychologists can't answer any of those questions. Psychologists will tell you, what's your pronouns? Okay, it's like, you know, give me a break, pal. Whatever new trend comes along, they'll go with it. They have no moral foundation, none whatsoever. And psychiatry is a joke. All their drugs cause a lobotomy, either fast with the antipsychotics or slow with the with the other ones, okay, antidepressants and whatnot, okay. So this book explains how all these brain diseases work, okay. Alzheimer's is bogus. Sporadic Alzheimer's is bogus, okay. You can call it, vascular hypothesis of dementia by Jack de la Torre was going in a good direction, but my theory of dementia and cognitive decline is the best one, supply and demand theory. It sort of superimposes itself on all the other stuff, feeds into it. And once you know it, what's so magnificent about it is you know what to do. Avoid the things that cause brain damage. And I go through all of them. There's a whole bunch of them. But isn't it nice to know them? Once you know them, it's no longer invisible mystery why people are cognitively declined. This book explains it. It also explains, simple, obvious things. Look at the Western world. All the patients have the same disease. They all eat, almost all of them eat high-fat diets with a lot of processed foods. So that causes hypertension and diabetes. Those are the two gateway diseases that feed into atherosclerosis. Then atherosclerosis plugs up the artery in the heart, in the brain, the spine, the eyeballs, the Johnson, every part of the body, the ears. And so they're all messed up because they have no blood flow to their body. So you got to open up those arteries. What do? Low-fat vegan diet. And then you also have to worry about things that destroy the brain, like heavy metals, like excitotoxins, like EMF. I go through all that stuff in this book. This is a pretty scholarly book. This is more advanced neuroscience than any fellowship-trained neurologist will know. I have a lot of neurologist friends. I talk to them all the time. I'm their teacher. Okay, I teach them neurology. It's a fact. Don't take my word for it. It's a fact. I teach them about excitotoxicity. I teach them about mechanisms of causation with migraine headaches and seizure disorders and all this stuff. And then I made a whole bunch of prevent and reverse books. Prevent and reverse, all the common stuff. Prevent and reverse hypertension, prevent and reverse diabetes, prevent and reverse obesity, prevent and reverse stroke and heart attack, prevent and reverse atrial fibrillation and CHF. This came out, actually it was my girlfriend. I wanted to write another big 2-volume massive summary of medicine. And she's like, stop doing that. Nobody's going to read those books. Nobody wants a big book. There's not many people that are nerdy people like you. It's going to cost too much money. All they care about is their own disease. Make short books about individual diseases and maybe somebody will look at them. And I'm like, oh, maybe you're right. And it worked out easier for me because I'll get a couple days off in any given month, and I can write a book real fast. I can write 60 pages in a day, and I'll just crank out a book because a lot of these books probably average about 200 pages, so I can crank them out real fast, and that's what I'll do. And they'll help you, how to prevent and reverse kidney disease, how to prevent and reverse dental disease. And I like all these books. Someday, if I ever get the time, I'm gonna write that 2-volume massive summary of clinical medicine in more updated detail. Prevent and reverse autoimmune disease. So anybody can find these pretty quick, and it can help them get better from the disease. And of course, I got tons of videos on my YouTube channel. So anyways, that's how I got that's how I got involved in writing all these books, and I sort of feel it's my calling. I think I'm the modern Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas of the modern age, summarizer of what's useful and knowledge related to healthcare and culture, and unifier of faith and reason. You can't have good quality work without Christian ethics, because you have to say, I will tell the truth even though it costs me financially. Because if you don't tell the truth, then your work is of no significant long-term value. So you have to do that to help people. In order to make decisions, we need to use the best possible information. The best possible information is the truth. So you need that, even though the truth is not the most profitable thing. So anyways, hope you found that helpful.